This is part 5 of our revision series. In this series, I have only two topics. Okay. So I have put around 10 problems each. So again, we'll do the same thing. So I'll give you some time to solve each problem. And then once you try, we will discuss one by one. Okay. So we'll see some problems from mechanical waves. Okay. So try to look at this problem. Okay, so that's the correct answer. So if you look at the wave of wavelength 17 meters, the frequency is 340 by 17, that is 20 hertz. Now, because the beats is 3, you need either 23 hertz or 17 hertz. So that is possible. Okay, 17 hertz, I think it is quickly possible. If you take wavelength of 20 meters, you will get a frequency of 17 hertz and the beats will be 3 per second. Very good. Okay, so try to answer this question. So very nice. So in this resonance tube experiment, each resonant frequency is actually obtained at a different length of the air column, and then for higher frequencies, higher overtones, the length of air column is actually higher. So very good. So B is correct. Okay, so can you answer this question? Okay, so if you take a string which is fixed at both ends, okay, now when we want a minimum frequency, we want the wavelength to be as high as possible. Okay, so now the fixed ends have to be nodes. So that means for the fundamental, you go from node to node, and then obviously there is a antinode in between. We are not getting into detailed study of the patterns right now, but this should be the structure of the wave. Now that means the length of the string will be lambda by 2. So the distance between two consecutive nodes is lambda by 2. So lambda will be 2L. So the minimum frequency, which is written as F1, will be V by lambda, which is V by 2L. And then speed of the wave on a string is, I think you know this, right? Square root of T by mu. Okay, now if you want higher frequencies, okay, now you need to generate, let's say, disturbance in such a way that you have more antinodes. Okay, so that's the string. So let's say instead of one antinode, you're going to have two antinodes. Okay, and obviously there should be a node in between. So it should look something like this. Okay, so now one thumb rule will be, if you have one antinode, you will get one loop. Okay, so if you take this as a loop, that's one loop. If you have two antinodes, let's say there are two loops, and the frequency will be second harmonic. It will be twice the fundamental. Okay, so this is the fundamental frequency. The lowest frequency is called fundamental or first harmonic. Okay, and then because the problem is talking about a fifth harmonic mode, so that means you will have 5 loops. Okay, so the fifth harmonic will be 5 times the fundamental 1 by 2L into square root of T by mu, tension by mu. So this is 40, 5 by 2L, and then the tension is 40 newtons. Now the mass per unit length is 1 gram per centimeter. So let us convert that into SI units. So 10 to the power minus 3, and then divided by 10 to the power minus 2. I think that would be 400 inside. So what do we have here? 40 is equal to 5 by 2L, and then I get 20. Okay, so L comes out to be how much? I think it is 0.8 meters. So the length will be 80 centimeters. Any questions, Beta? So you keep this pattern in mind. Okay, for a string fixed at both ends, you have all the harmonics. Okay, so if any particular frequency is, let's say, 2 times the minimum possible frequency, the fundamental, it is called second harmonic. If it is 3 times, it's called third harmonic, like that. Okay.
So like in
Yeah.
you know, when one end is covered and the other is open, the fundamental frequency is V by 4L, right?
V by 4L, yes.
So in that, you don't have second harmonic and fourth harmonic, right? You
Yes.
directly go to third.
Yes, yes. Because the naming convention for harmonics is the higher harmonics, if it is 3 times the minimum possible frequency, the fundamental, it's called third harmonic. If it is 5 times, fifth harmonic.
Okay.
But if you look at the other naming convention, overtones. Okay, so let's say for the string where one end is, let's say, either connected to a loose, well, it should be connected to a very, very thin string. So it's like there's hardly any tension here. So in that case, yeah, you have rightly said V by 4L, and then you get 3V by 4L, and then 5V by 4L. So this is called fundamental or first harmonic. And this is, because it is 3 times the fundamental, it is called third harmonic. And because it is one tone higher, they call it first overtone. Okay, then this will be fifth harmonic. It is the second overtone. Overtone is a simpler naming convention, one tone higher. You understand the naming convention?
Yeah.
The same thing for the organ pipes also. Yeah. There, I think the closed pipe is like the string which is only fixed at one end. The other end is like fixed to a very thin string. The open pipe is like the string fixed at both ends.
Yeah.
Okay, so try to answer this. Okay, so two tuning forks, you produce 4 beats per second. Let's say one of them has a frequency of 288 hertz. Okay, so that means the other one, because there are 4 beats per second, it could be, let's say, 292 hertz or 284 hertz. So if you put a little wax, you are making the tines of the tuning fork heavy. So that means they're going to vibrate a lot less vigorously. So the frequency will actually go down. Okay, so if the frequency goes down, then I think what will happen? The frequency goes down. See, if it goes down from 284, before you place the wax, you have these two possibilities, right? Either it is 292 or 284 hertz. Now, once you place a little wax on the tines of the, let's say, frequency with unknown, sorry, tuning fork with unknown frequency, what happens? The frequency goes down. So it'll, for example, it'll become, let's say, 282, suppose. And then here, suppose it becomes 290. Now, if you compare it with the other tuning fork, if it is 290, what is happening to the gap? The gap is reducing. If you look at the other frequency, what is happening to the gap? The gap is increasing.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so the number of beats is increasing. So what should be the answer?
292.
It should be 292. So this is how you should check it. You should work with the, let's say, possible. There are only two possibilities. You just take those possibilities and then work with them. So the answer should be 292. Okay, so answer this question. You said 80, right? So a string of length 40 centimeters is fixed between two rigid supports. The maximum wavelength. Okay, so for maximum wavelength, we're looking at the, let's say, ends to be nodes, and then you have only one antinode in between. So lambda by 2 should be 40 centimeters. So lambda is 80 centimeters. Very nice. Okay, so answer this question. See, if you have worked with this sonometer wire experiment, have you?
No.
Okay, so let's not get into details. I think you have some setup like this. Okay, so you have a string that goes over a pulley. Okay, so then you can hang weights at the other end. Now they place two bridges here. Okay, so the wire is going to vibrate in one of the harmonics between these two bridges. Okay, so the weight that you keep here provides the tension in the wire. Okay, now what is he saying? When you have a mass of 9 kg, so that means the tension is 9g, you have 5 antinodes. Now it is like a string between fixed supports. So when you have 5 antinodes, that's fifth harmonic, right? So you're using the same tuning fork. So the tuning fork will have a particular frequency F. Now initially it's vibrating in fifth harmonic. So phi by 2L into square root of tension will be 9G by mu. So it's the same wire. So the mass per unit length will not change. And the problem also says that the positions of the bridges has not changed. Okay, so the length will not change. Because we are using the same tuning fork, the frequency is still same. Okay, but because we have changed the mass at the other end, that velocity of the wave will change, hence the harmonic will change. So they are saying when you let's say replace the mass, the wire resonates forming 3 antinodes. So that means that's third harmonic. So 3 by 2L into square root of the tension now is M into G by mu. You understand how I wrote this?
Yeah.
Then you can ignore all the common terms on either side. So if I square on both sides, I get left hand side, I'll keep the relevant one. So 25 into 9. The right hand side I have 9 into M. So M should be 25 kgs. Okay. You understood?
Yeah. I took the wrong numbers.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, but this is an important question. They do ask these questions. Okay, so try to answer this question. I don't remember the answer, but we will discuss. So you are getting 0.05, right? Okay. Now, in this resonance column experiment, it says 0.1 meters of the air column resonates with a tuning fork in the fundamental mode. And then when the length of air column is changed to 0.35, the same tuning fork is resonating with the first overtone. I think we talked about this, right? As the frequencies, the resonant frequencies goes higher, the length of the air column increases. But whenever you have this end correction, the length of the air column, so if you measure, let's say this is water, and then if you measure this as L, the antinode does not occur exactly at the top of the tube. It is going to occur slightly higher. So that gap is called the end correction. So instead of taking L, you should take L plus E.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, when I look at the fundamental, okay, so the fundamental is V by 4L, but instead of L, I'm going to take it as L plus E. So I'll take that as L1 plus E. Okay, so that's the fundamental. Now, the next resonant frequency will be third harmonic. So that will be 3V by 4 into, let's say, L2 plus E. You understand this? So this is the third harmonic. Now, in this resonance tube experiment, you're using the same tuning fork to obtain the resonance. So that means these frequency numbers are same. Okay, that of the tuning fork. Now L1 is given, L2 is given. So now all we have to do is, let's say V by 4 is common, so ignore that. So I have L2 plus E is equal to 3L1 plus 2E. Sorry, that's I think 3E, right?
3E, right?
Yeah, mistake. I mean, in my head, I'm already getting 2E, so what is happening? So this is 3E. So 2E will be L2 minus this. So what is L2 given as? L2 is 0.35 minus 3 into L1, which is 0.3. So this happens to be 0.05, but that is 2E. So E will be half of that. So 0.025. Okay. So the end correction will be B. You understand this?
Yeah.
Okay, so try answering this question. I think you know, if you have only two frequencies, how will you get the number of beats? You take the difference. Okay, but here you have three frequencies. I don't know, this new, I usually don't like it. So I'll just take it as F, and the other one is F minus 1. I mean, no offense meant. It's just that it confuses me with velocity every time. Okay, so if I take this, one quick way for this problem is, I think usually it's actually a very hard question. I mean, when we study beats itself is slightly a difficult concept. Okay. Now, what you can do is you can ignore the middle frequency and then take the difference of the other frequencies, and the answer is 2 beats per second. You can do that like that. Okay. But if you want to understand what is really going on here, beats usually occurs when you have two sound waves mixing at a particular location. Okay, so that mixing is usually happening at the person's ear. Okay, so if you have do you have any experience with any musical instruments?
Yeah.
What instruments?
With the keyboard, like flute.
Okay, so I think so. Then you might have heard about like beats anytime. Beat.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Especially like for guitar. I mean, if a string is out of tune, you can actually get it in tune by playing, let's say, well-tuned guitar, and then the string of the guitar which is out of tune.
Yeah.
So I think the experienced musicians have this ability to catch the increases and then decreases in the loudness of the sound. Yeah. Okay, so what beats means is, like, suppose if the beat frequency is 3, that means in 1 second, the loudness reaches that highest value 3 times. Okay, so that is 3 beats per second. So if that, let's say if there is if one guitar string has like 440 hertz and the other is 443 hertz, then the beat frequency will be 3. So when the musicians, the trained musicians, I can't make it out. Okay, it's very difficult for me. Okay, but the trained musicians, when they hear this, they can catch that difference. Okay, so they know that the guitar strings are out of sync, out of tune. So what they do is they try to, let's say, tighten the string using those keys at the end near the neck.
Yeah.
Okay, so when they increase the tension, then they try to like do till they don't hear any such, let's say, loud notes. Okay, so then they say, okay, the two strings are in sync. It's a very interesting thing. I think nowadays you have those nice instruments called metronomes and all. They help you with the tuning. But trained musicians, I have seen them. That they're very good at this.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's basically, let's say, if you know the time gap between two loudest notes. Okay, if the time gap between two loudest notes is 1 second, so that means you have, let's say, one hertz frequency, but the 1 beat per second. So if it is 0.5 seconds, so that means in 1 second it is going to happen twice. So 2 beats per second. Okay, so that is what you'll have to understand. And from the, let's say, basic concepts of waves, you know that intensity refers to the loudness. Matlab, higher intensity means higher energy. And this intensity is proportional to the amplitude square. Okay, so the mixing of these waves is happening at a particular location. Okay, usually the person's ear. So here you don't have to worry about the time component. We usually, when you take a wave, mathematically we'll write it as a into sine kx minus omega t or kx plus omega t, right? Because the mixing is happening at a particular location in space, you don't have to worry about the position component. Okay, so you ignore the position component, and then you write each of these waves as like, let's say the middle wave could be a into sine. I forget about that minus also. I can write it as 2 pi into f into time. Okay, so the other one will be a sine 2 pi into f plus 1 into t. So here we are assuming, see, all these, this is a complex question actually. Okay, the question anyway says equal amplitudes. That's nice. So a into sine 2 pi into f minus 1 into t. You understand this? Now, mathematically, you can add all of them.
Okay.
This is superposition. Okay, now you are trying to figure out the net amplitude here. Now, if you use your basic trigonometry, let's say I add first the first term and the last term. Okay, so you know these, right? Sine a plus b plus sine a minus b will be what? 2 sine a cos b.
Yeah.
You know this. Okay, so how is that a obtained? You add a plus b, a minus b, and then divide by 2. Similarly, if you see, if I add the first term and the last term, I'll get 2a sine, I get 2 pi, I add f minus 1 plus f plus 1 and then divide by 2. So I'll get 2f t, and then cos of, I'll get 2 pi, I have to subtract f minus 1 minus f plus 1. So I'll get minus 2. So cos of minus and then plus will be same. So I can just write it as, if I divide by 2, I'll get only t. You're okay with this trigonometry? So now here, if you see, I can write it this way. So I have, let's say a common, and then I write 2 cos of 2 pi t, okay, plus 1 into sine 2 pi ft. Okay, so here what is happening, you have two, let's say, functions. Okay, so product of two functions. You understand?
Mm.
So now if I graph this, so let's say if I try to, what we can do is, we'll take some simple frequency and then try to graph this to understand what happens. Let me write in the next. Y is equal to 2. So A into 2 cos 2 pi t plus 1 into sine 2 pi f t. So now I don't know what frequency. Let's say if I take a number, f is equal to, I'll take, to keep it simple, well, we want to graph it and then see. So let's say I'll take f as, usually, let's say f will be like around maybe, let's say 200 hertz, suppose. Okay, so this function is changing very rapidly. So here 2 pi into t. So that means the frequency here is 1. You see this here? The frequency is 1. So that means this function is moving very slowly. Okay, so this is changing very slowly, changes slowly, and this changes very fast. So when this happens, sorry, what am I writing? Very fast, that one. So have you ever graphed the product of two functions? So when such a thing happens, usually it looks something like this. If you look at this first function, if I don't have this 1, my cos would actually start like this. This is 1 and this is 2, 1 and 2, let's say. The cos function would look something like this, like this. But since I'm adding 1, I think this function will get shifted upwards. Okay, so it'll be something like this. It'll get shifted upwards. I don't know. I may not be drawing it nicely. Yeah, I think I can't draw it nicely, but we will see. And then the other function, it is changing very rapidly. So what it does is like, it kind of wiggles in between that. Okay, as a fast. Okay, so you'll actually get a pattern which you can use to understand the amplitude and the intensity. So what we will do is like, I'll show you in graphing software. Okay, so now do you see what is happening here? See, the blue graph is the sine one. Okay, so which is changing very fast. But I took 2 pi into x, but I want how much? I want 100 there, which I did not put. Let's say if I put 100, then it'll go very fast. Okay, I think it's going very fast, so I'm not able to see actually. You understand? So I think I'll have to see a way to graph that. Maybe if I reduce it. See, it's happening like very, very fast. But if you think about it, okay, that's not, that is okay. So here, what you should understand is, we have this function 2 cos of 2 pi x. Okay, now when we are taking the, I think the graph is like, I did not draw it nicely. I'll do one thing. This is what you need to understand. See, suppose I draw this graph. Okay, so this looks something like this. I mean, because I'm shifting it by 1, I think everything will shift upwards. So this function will look something like this. Will look something like this. It goes like this. Now the other function, sine function, is changing very rapidly. Okay, so that rapidly changing function, what it will do is it will wiggle in this, but to do that, let us not get into too much of maths here. You should also take an envelope of this. So when I say envelope of this, you will have a mirror image of this function. So that mirror image looks something like this. Okay, so the mirror image goes something like this. You understand?
Yeah.
So you take a mirror image, and then the fast moving function will be between these, let's say, curves. Okay, so the fast moving function, if it is changing 100 times per second, I cannot draw 100, but I mean, if you actually correctly draw in the graphing software, if you adjust the terms, it should look something like this. So that's the beats you get.
Okay.
Okay, it goes very fast. Now, for us, if you look at the amplitude and then square the amplitude, you'll get the intensity. So for us, what is really important is not just the amplitude. Amplitude is of course important, but we need to square that because intensity is proportional to amplitude square. So if you square that, your amplitude square will look something like this. Wherever you have a negative term, that will also become positive because this is all positive. So if you square, I think it will be like slightly higher. You will get that till here. And then this negative will go up. It will be something like this. And then again, this positive will be something like this and so on. So here you will get the loudest note. Here you also get the loudest note. Okay. But that is like if you take this cos 2 pi t, the period will be 1 second. But there is a problem here. Okay. When you have three frequencies, they say that beats, you don't necessarily have to go to the loudest. In between, you have slightly less louder notes like this. Okay, so this is also less louder note. So you can consider this as the beats time. So if you work with the trigonometry here, this is 0.5 seconds. Okay, so now in 1 second, you have like 2 beats. Okay, so 1 and then 2. So if you start here, 1 and then 2. So that is why the beats frequency is 2 beats per second. Okay, I know. You understand what is happening here. Yes, Peter? Okay, so this is actually very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, right now you ignore the middle frequency, look at the other two frequencies, take a difference if they ask you this question. You understand? Okay. So, okay, so try to answer this question.
Right?
Yes? Is better?
Hello?
Yeah. What is the
like
question?
if they give only 2 frequencies, you just take the difference, right?
Yes, if they give you 2 frequencies, that's a nice one. Okay, just take the difference. Okay, if they give you 3 frequencies, take the extreme ones and then take the difference. Usually that should work out. Okay, yeah. Okay, so try answering this question. Guess is always welcome.
Yeah, I think maybe minus pi to 3 by 50j cap.
No. Okay, see, I think you know string waves are transverse waves.
Yeah.
Okay, now the problem says the wave is moving to the right. Okay, so this is a snapshot. Snapshot is like you have taken a photograph of the wave at a particular time. Okay, so this is the this is how wave looks like on that string. Now, because it is a transverse wave, if the wave is moving along x-axis, the particles are oscillating up and down, right? So that means the particles will have only y velocity. So you have guessed it right. Okay, so you have eliminated these two, so that is nice. Okay, now because the wave is traveling to the right, if this is at time t, let's say if you wait for small duration t plus delta t, suppose, how will the wave look like? The wave will like shift forward like this. It will be something like this. You understand? So that means how is that point moving? The point is getting higher, is going up. So that means the velocity of that point will be positive, upwards. You understand what I'm saying? Okay, so that means what is the answer? The answer should be A. So you don't have to worry about the numbers here in this case. You understand? It's like if you understand the concept, you get the answer by elimination. Okay, but suppose you want to like check this, you can write, let's say, the displacement function that represents the wave as a, let's say, sine kx minus omega t. Now, when you want the particle velocity, it is the partial derivative of this function with respect to time. So you do dou y by dou t. So x is constant. So you'll get minus a omega cos of kx minus omega t. Okay. Okay. So now, when I try to, let's say, take a look at y value, if you look at the diagram, y value is like, what is the y value? 1 over root, I think he says 0.5, right? Yeah, y value is 0.5 meters. Sorry, what am I saying? 5 centimeters. 5 centimeters, 5 centimeters. See, better. This amplitude is 10 centimeters, right? Amplitude is the maximum possible displacement. So that is 10 centimeters. This is 5 centimeters, or I can just take a by 2. Now, if I take a look at this a by 2, this is a by 2, this is also a by 2. So when you are looking at the angle, this will happen at 30 degrees. This will happen at 150 degrees. So this kx minus omega t, I will take it as 150 degrees. You understand? Are you with me? Kx minus omega t will be 150 degrees. So now when I substitute here, the velocity of the particle will be, because I have took this as a by 2, so a sine kx minus omega t. So I have two choices, 30 and 150, but looking at the diagram, that should be 150 degrees. And then if I substitute here, so I'll get a omega, and then I think cos of 150, I can just write, because there is a minus sign outside, I can just write that as cos. You're okay? So then substitute a is given as 10 centimeters, which is 0.1. Omega is 2 pi by time period. Okay, so now what is the time period? Time period will be 1 over frequency, or I can just write it as 2 pi into frequency, this one. So frequency is velocity of sound, sorry, why am I saying sound? Velocity of wave on the string, which is 10 centimeter per second. So which is 0.1 by wavelength is 0.5. So that is 1 by 5. So I'll put 1 by 5. So it will be here. Cos 30 is root 3 by 2. So you get pi root 3 by 50. Okay, you can do this, but without that also we're getting the answer, right?
Yeah.
So again, so sometimes you can just answer the question by your conceptual understanding quickly. Okay, without that's maybe like options are helping us. They want to help us. Okay, you understand?
Yeah.
Okay, so try answering this question. It is F. See, if you have a cylindrical tube open at both ends, the fundamental is F. Okay, so if it is open at both ends, suppose the open end is an antinode as far as the displacement is considered. This is also antinode. So in between, you should have a node. Okay, so the fundamental frequency F is V by 2L. I think you understand this. Okay, so lambda by 2 is L, lambda is 2L. Now, when this tube is dipped vertically in water, what is happening to the length of the tube? The length of the tube has become half. Now, what is the fundamental here? V by 4L, right? The fundamental frequency here is V by 4L, but L has become L by 2. So that means it is still V by 2L. That means this is also F.
Yeah, okay.
You understand? Okay, now let us look at few problems from electrostatics. You like this topic, electrostatics? Yeah, okay. So let's look at few problems here.
It's better than waves and stuff.
Okay, yeah. So take a look at this problem. See here, initially switch A is open. So you can forget about the 3 microfarad capacitor. So I just have this 2 microfarad capacitor. And again, if you don't have a resistor, long time is like almost instant, right? So 10 volts. And then this capacitor quickly gets charged. Okay, so this will be positively charged, this will be negatively charged. Now, what will be the charge here? It will be CV, right? So 20 microcoulombs. You understand? Now, what is he saying? SP is closed. Now SA is open. So now I can ignore the battery. You're okay, beta? Okay, so SA I cut off. So you can ignore about this and then you have this. But this capacitor is charged now. It has 20 microcoulombs. Now what will happen? The charge will leave this plate and then the other capacitor will get charged till the potentials are equal. Okay, oh sorry. Till the potentials are equal, the charge transfer takes place. So now suppose Q charge goes to the other, sorry, I think I'll just take the other color. Okay, so Q charge is put on to the 3 microfarad capacitor. Then what will be the charge here? Charge will be 20 minus Q. You understand? But the potential has to be same. So now for the 2 microfarad capacitor, what will be the potential? If Q is CV, potential is Q by C. So I can write that as 20 minus Q by C, that is 2. For the 3 microfarad capacitor, it is Q by 3. Okay, so how much is this? This is 60 minus 3Q is 2Q. So 5Q is 60. So Q will be 12 microcoulombs. You understand this? Yeah. And then you should also do slightly differently also. I mean, you can do this orally. See, the potential is same. If the potential is same, you write potential as Q1 by C1 is equal to Q2 by C2, right? So mentally you can get that the ratio of the charges is proportional to the capacitance. So what is the ratio of the capacitance? It is 2:3. So that means out of 5 parts, 3 parts should be for the 3 microfarad capacitor. So if you have 20 microcoulombs, if I break that into 5 parts, each part is 4 microcoulombs. So 3 parts would be 12 microcoulombs. You should do that quickly.
Yeah.
You understand?
Okay.
Okay, so try answering this question.
Discuss.
Yeah, okay. So there was a delay actually. Fine. Okay, so here I think the only thing is we're assuming that there is like a large gap between these two spheres. So I have this sphere A of radius 1 millimeter. So let's take that as R. R is 1 millimeter and the other is B, which has 2R. Now these are conductors. Okay, so they're like capacitors. Okay. Now, when you connect them with a wire, what will happen? They must attain the same potential. You're okay here. So now, whatever charge that they have, okay. So whatever charge that they have, that should get divided between them in such a way that the potential is same. Okay. Suppose they are saying both the spheres are charged. So we don't know what charge we have on sphere A. We don't know what charge we have on sphere B. But let's consider that total charge is Q. Okay, so before connecting them with the wire. Now, the potential of A, okay, the potential, or you can say the capacitance, or you can just say potential. If some charge gets onto the sphere, I can get the potential by K QA by R, and the potential of this will be K QB by R, which is 2R. Now, I think this problem is assuming that this is like they're separated by a large distance. Okay, otherwise I'll have to consider the potential due to the other charge also here. Now, these two potentials must be same so that the charge transfer stops. Now, if you look at the charge ratio is what is that? 1:2. You understand? QA by QB is 1:2. So that means if I take charge Q, 1/3 is going to appear on sphere A, and then 2/3 will appear on sphere B. You understand? Now, we don't want the potential, we want the electric field. Okay, so what is the electric field at the location of A? So if you calculate the electric field, what will be the electric field? Electric field is KQ by R square. So electric field, I'll write it as K, Q is Q by 3 by R square. And then here the electric field will be, oh, I think this is a bad color. I'll go with yellow, it's yellow only, okay. So this is K 2Q by 3 and then 2R whole square. So if you look at what we have here, I think KQ by 3 is anyway common. I think I'll get 1 by 2R square here. That's the electric field here. And the electric field here is KQ by 3 by R square. So if you take a look at the ratio here. So what do we get here? From here, I think I have 1 and then half. So 1:2. So that should be 2:1. Do you understand, Ananya? It should be 2:1. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think there's a lag.
Yeah, there is actually a lag. But again, this 5 centimeters, maybe we can treat it as a long distance between them. Okay.
Okay.
5 centimeters, because the spheres are having like 1 millimeter and 2 millimeter radius, right? So you can treat that it's like very large distance. Okay.
But what if it wasn't very large distance?
Oh, large distance, it will be complicated. In that case, what will, if it is not large distance, then I will have to write the potential due to this also here. Okay, so that would be slightly complicated. So they don't ask such questions in, let's say, let's hope they don't ask in mains and NEET. Because I'll have to write potential due to B at the location of A, and then at the location of B, I'll have to write potential of A. Then those two must be equal. That will be like complicated. Okay, so try this problem. Okay, so 1:2 is correct. Again, you can keep this in mind as a thumb rule. Okay, but this is actually slightly confuses everybody. What is happening is we consider wires as resistanceless, but I think the amount of energy that goes on to the capacitor is also small. So when we say wires are resistanceless, we don't literally say that like they're resistanceless. The resistance is very, very, very low. So the energies that are stored in the capacitor is also very small. So compared to that, I think the energy loss is actually significant in these cases. Okay, so if I say C is the capacitance, the charge that you will get is CV, and the energy that is stored in the capacitor is like half CV square. Now, but the battery, every time as it transports, okay, so for 1 coulomb, it will do V joules of energy. It does V joules of, what am I saying? It does V joules of work. So if you have, this is the total charge transferred, the work done by battery is Q into V, which is CV square. So now this is the work done by battery, but only half of it is stored as energy. So where did the rest go? That is the loss in energy. So for the ratio, it is 1:2. So you are right here. Okay, so try answering this question. See, here, okay, the gap between the plates is filled with 2 dielectrics. I think you know that the capacitance increases by a factor of the dielectric constant. Now, if I take, let's say, these 2 plates, without the dielectric, it is 9. So I can say 9 is epsilon naught area by D. Okay. Now, when I fill D by 3 with the dielectric constant 3, the capacitance here will be 3 times epsilon naught A by the gap is D by 3. Okay, so this becomes 9 epsilon naught A by D. Okay, so that becomes 81, right? Okay, now the other remaining region, it is filled with 6. So the capacitance here will be, then I think you can guess, it will be twice this. Oh, sorry, no. I think I'm jumping. That's too bad. Okay, 6 epsilon naught, let's do that. The gap is 2D by 3. So if you look at this, I think this is also 81.
9.
Okay, so this is 81, this is also 81. So now when you have such dielectrics, it's like 2 capacitors in series. So if you have 2 capacitors in series, you will get half of this. Okay, both is 81, 81. So it will be like 40.5 picofarads. You understand? Yeah. Okay, so try this problem. See, 0 will be correct in two cases. One, if you have a shell with uniformly distributed charge, inside the shell electric field is 0. Or you have a solid conductor, solid sphere, but it is a conductor. Then the electric field inside will be 0. Because in that case, the charge is like going to appear only on the surface. Okay, so I'll give you a few minutes to try this. So here again, you can either use Gauss law or shell theorems. Okay, so let's use Gauss law. So if you have a sphere of radius r, we want to calculate the electric field inside at a distance ri from the center. Now, you have to understand that whenever the density is just dependent on the radius, it is called symmetrically distributed charge. Okay, so in that case, you can actually use Gauss law. So if I use Gauss law at this location, okay, now the outside charge I can ignore. So for me, only the charge inside is important. Okay, so let's say the charge inside is Q in, suppose. The flux would be, if E is the electric field here, that would be radially outwards. I can write E into area. Okay, so what is the surface area here? 4 pi Ri square. Okay, so that is equal to charge inside by epsilon naught. You remember this Gauss law? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I need to calculate the charge inside. That is important. So now how do I calculate the charge inside? Because the density depends on the radius, I'll have to integrate. So I will take a thin shell, maybe of radius r and then thickness dr. Okay. Now I'll write the charge for that. Okay, so what will be charge? dq will be density. Density is q r by pi r to the power 4 and the volume of that shell. So volume of that shell will be 4 pi r square surface area into thickness dr. So here what do we get? 4 cube by r to the power 4 r cube dr. So if I integrate this, I'll get the charge within Ri. So I'll integrate from 0 to Ri. So this is r to the power 4 by 4. So that 4 disappears. I'll get cube by capital R to the power 4 Ri to the power 4. Are you okay so far?
Mm.
Now I substitute this here. So E into 4 pi Ri square is q by epsilon naught r to the power 4 into Ri to the power 4. So I think this 4 pi Ri square will go to the right hand side and then E will be A. A option is correct. You understand this? So two steps basically. One, you're using your Gauss law, okay, which let's say gives you information that the charge outside radius r sub I is not important. Okay, so the charge within Ri is important. But how do I get the charge? I'll have to do a basic integration to get the total charge. Okay. So try this problem. Option is right.
D.
D. Okay, you have to be careful, beta. See, the question says positively charged. Okay, so if it is positively charged, if I take, let's say, this charge, okay, so you can easily guess that about y-axis, there is a symmetrical distribution. So that means the positive charge will actually repel another positive charge, right? So test charge is always positive. So the net electric field will be downwards. So I can eliminate A and D, in fact. Okay, so I'm left with, let's say, B and C. Now, how do we get the answer? If I take, let's say, a tiny portion here with an angular position theta, so this is d theta. So I take a small element here. So that would provide an electric field in this direction. So dE. Now, if you look at it, I think by symmetry, horizontal components anyway disappear. We're going to work with the vertical components. Okay, so if this angle is theta, vertical component will be sine theta. So I can take dE sine theta, and then if I integrate that, I should get the net electric field. Now, because of that charge, what will be the charge of that element? Charge per unit length. I think I'll write that 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught first. Now charge. Charge is charge per unit length. Length of a semicircle is pi r. And then into length, which is r d theta, and then sine theta. You're going to integrate from 0 to pi. So let's pull constants out. Q by 4 pi square, and then I think I did not divide by r square. That's important, right? Charge by r square. So you get r square, and then integral sine theta d theta. Integral sine theta d theta is minus cos theta. Okay, and then you substitute 0 to pi. I think you know, you're familiar with minus cos theta, that's 2. So you should get answer as C. Because you get in the numerator 2, so in the denominator you have 4. You understand? The direction is vertically downward, so that is why minus j cap. Okay, so try solving this one. Okay, so whenever they give you velocities, V means velocity. There is a problem with this English language. No offense meant, but see, English language is great, but when I teach physics, this is what I encounter. Okay, so we have this 26 letters, and then the same letter is used to describe like more than one physical quantity. So we have to go with the context. This happens many times. Okay, so all of a sudden I'll be teaching potential and they'll just say velocity.
Velocity.
Okay, so again, no offense meant. So the electric field, you have to remember that is the negative. You can say right now we don't have to get into a higher ideas. So we can say if I take dV by dr, negative of that is the electric field. I think you know this, right? Yeah. So we will get here the electric field as minus 2ar minus b. Okay. Now we want to find the charge density inside the ball.
How would we get b?
Oh, sorry. That's a mistake. That's constant, right? Yeah. Why did I write minus b? I have no idea. That's like my crazy brain giving me wrong ideas. Okay. I think that's okay, right? Yeah. Thanks, beta. Thanks for pointing that out. Okay. So we have only minus 2ar. Now that means if it is minus, if I take a sphere, okay, and then inside this sphere, I'm only considered about a small region of radius r, spherical region. Minus means the charge is negative. So that's the idea you should get. Okay, so the charge is negative. So the charge density will be negative. Now here, because we have the electric field, we can use the Gauss law. Okay, so electric field minus 2ar into, let's say, surface area 4 pi r square should give me the charge, total charge inside by epsilon naught. Now, if I want the charge density, so charge density is what? Q in by 4 by 3 pi r cube. Now from here, I think if you look at it carefully, Q in by 4 by 3 pi r cube will be 4 pi. I think I can just take 3 outside. So 3 I'll taking upstairs. So I'll get minus 6, sorry, minus 2a epsilon naught if you see those numbers. Yeah. So you get minus 2a epsilon naught. So we should get minus 6a epsilon naught. You understand? It's a good problem, but doable, right? So the answer should be T. So we're getting electric field. See, in the earlier problem, we went from charge to electric field. Now we are going from electric field to charge density. Okay, so this is our charge density as a function of R, which is, by the way, constant. Okay. Okay, now if you go back to the previous problem, just to get a pattern, okay. Where is that actually? Yeah. The electric field was proportional to R square and the charge density is linear. Okay, if the electric field is proportional to R, the charge density will be constant. You understand?
Yes.
Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, charge
Wait,
density.
can you repeat it again?
Yeah, you can keep that in mind. Charge density is constant. Electric field will be proportional to R.
Okay.
Okay. So charge density is proportional to R. Electric field will be proportional to R square. So keep that in mind. Sometimes it will be helpful. Okay, so try this problem. To be knowing about Wheatstone bridge, right? So this is a balanced Wheatstone bridge where the middle capacitor is of no use. Okay, so how do we understand that? If I attach a battery across A and B, suppose. Okay, so to the right side, everything will be at negative potential. So all this is like negative potential, or maybe I can just say that is 0 volts, suppose. V is the battery. And the right hand side, everything will be positive potential. So let's say that is V. Okay, so these are all metals, right? Okay, capacitor is a metal. So everywhere you have potential V. So now if you look at the symmetry of the situation, this point is similar to this point, identical to that point, right? So if this point gets some potential, let's say V star, so this point should also get V star. So that means the potential difference across 5 microfarad capacitor is 0. So that means it should not get any charge, and then that is actually useless. So if you remove that capacitor, that's okay. You can remove the capacitor. So then what is left? The upper branch, you have two capacitors in series. Okay, so if you have two capacitors in series, you can do C1, C2 by C1 plus C2. So you get 6 into 3 by 6 plus 3. So that is 2 microfarad. And the lower branch also two capacitors in series, 2 microfarad. They are in turn parallel. So parallel, you add them. So you get 4 microfarad. You understand this? Okay, good. So we have one last question. Okay, so try this. Look at Wheatstone bridge, and that too balanced Wheatstone bridge. The idea is this.
For the potential.
The potential should be same, that 5 microfarad capacitor should become useless. There should not be any charge moving towards that. And then when that happens, the ratio of this and this will be equal to ratio of this capacitor and this capacitor. But here, left hand side I have 2:1, the right hand side I have 1:2. So this is not a balanced Wheatstone bridge. Okay, not a balanced Wheatstone bridge. I think you'll have to bring those words together. Bridge. Okay. Now, how do we solve such a problem? What we can do is, you can just say again, the potential of the battery is V. So if overall Q charge is supplied by the battery, again, I think we should not use the word supplied, transported. Okay. So the battery transported Q charge. So if I remove this network and then replace with a single capacitor, okay. So the single capacitor does the same job of transferring charge Q. Okay, so if you are able to write this as Q is equal to CV, that C is the equivalent capacitance. Okay, so to accomplish that, what we can do here is, I can take some potential to these points. Okay, so let's say I take this point and then say that it has potential V1, and take this point and then say that has potential V2. Now, look at this idea. If I consider these three plates, the upper three plates, they are isolated. That means the total charge on them should come out to be zero. So similarly, the lower plates are also isolated. Okay, so what you can do is, you can start from this node. This is called something known as node analysis. You can start from there and then go to the left, to the right, and then down, and then write the charge on those plates. Some of those charges should be zero. So you can quickly write that. So let's say if I go to the left, I have V1 minus V is the potential. So this point will have V. So the charge will be capacitance into the potential difference, which is V1 minus V. Now, if I look to the right, this point B has zero potential. Okay, so this has V potential. So look to the right, I have capacitance is 3, V1 minus 0. And then if I look downwards, I have capacitance is 5, and then I have V1 minus V2. But this is the charge on these three plates. Some of these charges should be 0. Okay, so you will get one equation from here. So what is the equation that you will get? I think it is 14 V1 minus 5 V2 is equal to, I think, 6V. So you have this equation. And similarly, I can take the lower branch, lower three capacitor plates. So I do the same thing here. I look to the left, look to the right, and then now look above. Okay, you understand the way I'm writing the equation here? Now, V2 minus V. Okay, so I think let me mark those so that you understand. Okay, so this side, this will have V potential. So this side, it will be 0. Okay. So now if I look to the left, I have capacitance is 3, and then V2 minus V. Look to the right, capacitance is 6. I have V2 minus 0. Look above, I have capacitance is 5, and then V2 minus V1, that is 0. So now from here, I think what do we get? V1 is like 5 times, so minus 5V1. I think the other one is plus 14V2 is equal to 3V. I think more or less this is like a very nice symmetrical simultaneous equations. This is easy to solve. What you can do is, first you can just add them. So if you add them, what do you get? 14 minus 5, 9, and then 9. Right hand side also 9. If you add, you will nicely get V1 plus V2 as V. Now if you subtract, you get 19 V1 minus 19 V2 is equal to, what do you get? 3V, right? If you subtract. So I think we can write V1 minus V2 as 3V by 19. Okay, now if I add them and then divide by 2, I get V1. So V1 will be how much? 19 plus 3 will be 22. 11V by 19. You're okay?
Yeah.
And then V2, if I subtract, I'll get subtract and then divide by 2. So 19 minus 3 will be 16. So that is 8V by 19. Are you okay so far, beta? Okay. Then what you can do is, I can get the charge on this capacitor, lower 3 microfarad capacitor, because now I know V2. V2 is 8V by 19. So V minus V2 is how much? 11V by 19. So the charge here will be C into that. So 33 V by 19 is the charge on the lower capacitor. Similarly, V minus V1. V1 is 11 V by 19. So that is 8V by 19. So if I multiply by 6, I'll get 48 V by 19. So now if you look at the upper capacitor, it has obtained 48 V by 19 charge. Lower capacitor has 33. So if I add them, what do I get? Let me switch to the other color. I hopefully have not made any calculation mistakes. I do that many times. So the total charge will be what transferred by the capacitor, battery. 48 plus 33 will be
81.
How much? 80, 81, right? Okay, so 81 by 19 V. So that means this number should be the capacitance. So I think even my calculation, I might have done a mistake when I calculated. So I think this should be 81 by 19. So C is the answer. But provided that is 81 by 19. You understand the concept here?
Yeah.
This is called node analysis. So revise this. Okay, so I think that should be 81 by 19. Okay. So yeah, I said last question, but one last question. This is definitely last. Okay, so try to answer correct. Okay, so if you have non-uniform electric field, there will be torque also. Sorry, if you have uniform electric field, there's anyway torque. Non-uniform will give you force as well, because the charged particles will have different force magnitudes. Very nice. So A is correct. Good. I think, yeah, I think we worked very hard today, right?